This is Rome, New York. Near this spot, a long time ago, something important was started. And it would change the world. I want to tell you the story. So let me take you back to Independence Day, 207 years ago. The roar of cannons on Dominic Street signaled the beginning of a new project. The beginning of a new era. The beginning of the Erie Canal. And although many couldn't see it at the time, its transformative impact would be immense. It would help make New York the Empire State and set New York City on a course to become the Big Apple. Judge Joshua Hathaway, speaking at the groundbreaking event in Rome, expressed pride in commencing what he called one of the grandest objects that ever has, and perhaps ever will, grace our nation. The plan? To connect Rome and Utica with a hand-dug ditch as part of an initial section to connect the Hudson River to Lake Erie, and hence Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. And it was all done by people like you and I. A bunch of unnamed, faceless New Yorkers who ultimately shaped the country that we live in today. And that's why we look at local history, to appreciate the world around us and how it came to be. But who cares about canals? Nowadays we drive around cars and fly around planes. But you have to keep in mind, back in early America, the only way to get around was by horse, by foot, or by boat. And for the latter, you need water, which is where canals come in. You can basically make a river where there isn't one. Kind of like an 1800s version of Amazon Prime, canals allowed people and things to move around relatively quickly. Before canals in modern-day New York, the Haudenosaunee people used what was known as the Great Carrying Place, or Oneida, as a portage link connecting the Mohawk River to Wood Creek. It helped people to get across the area of New York for hundreds of years. It worked well, for a while anyway, but after the American Revolution, the desire for expansion led to a brainstorming of new ideas. And the ideas were out there. For decades, several people from Cadwalader Colden to Elkanah Watson pushed for a canal to connect east and west. And even George Washington chimed in. In 1783, he visited the area of Rome, which at the time was known as Fort Stanwix, and he discussed the possibility of a canal to replace the Oneida. It wasn't long before the Western Lock Navigation Company was formed, and it would create some of the first canals in New York State. One of them is known today as simply the Rome Canal, a 1.7-mile length from the Mohawk River to Wood Creek, which basically replaced the Oneida. Eventually, it was dismantled, but you can still find original bricks from one of its locks on North George Street in Rome. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase happened, and it really made the need for a water route through the Appalachian Mountains paramount. This is around the time that DeWitt Clinton enters the scene. He was a prominent Democratic Republican and former mayor of New York City, and became an important political advocate for the idea. Some refer to him as the quote-unquote father of the Erie Canal, which is a bit of an overstatement, but he did help to get the ball rolling. In 1810, the New York State Legislature appointed a canal commission and ordered a survey across the state to investigate routes. Eventually, DeWitt Clinton would embark on a speaking tour, urging the support of a state-funded canal project. And when he was elected as governor in 1817, he had the power he needed to give the final push for its construction. And so, the official groundbreaking of this ditch took place on July 4th, 1817. With the first shovelful of dirt dug by Judge John Richardson and others following. Engineers decided to start the project in the middle of the route in Rome, New York, because there was a relatively flat stretch of land for miles, and it was their best bet for early success. Many still mocked the project, referring to it as Clinton's Ditch or Clinton's Folly, because it was such an unfathomable task. The construction would involve clearing a 60-foot wide track, much of it through untouched wilderness. In charge of this immense project was resident of Rome Benjamin Wright. Today, Wright is remembered as the father of American civil engineering. And there were many engineering challenges. And in response, many good old American solutions. I mean, dynamite wasn't even invented yet. So rocks had to be drilled by hand and blown out of the soil with black powder. Many special tools were developed, like root-cutting plows, earth-moving scoops, horse-powered tree stump pullers, and a wheelbarrow invention designed by Jeremiah Brainerd of Rome that provided a lighter and more durable alternative than what was available at the time. 75% of the canal workers of this initial section were upstate New Yorkers who resided along canal lands. One of them was a young John Bloomfield Jervis, who worked as an axeman, clearing the way for the canal. Around this time, Canvas White of Whitesboro was busy researching mortar options for the project and would end up introducing meager limestone, a crucial factor in the construction. He basically discovered America's first hydraulic cement, integral for all of the planned locks. And after a bunch of hard work and challenges overcome, the Rome-Utica part of the middle section was completed on October 23, 1819. Church bells rang and crowds cheered. It was not just an engineering triumph. It was envisioned as the beginning of a new style of society, and it's one that we've essentially sprouted from. The procedures were established, inventions perfected, and results tested for the further success of the overall Erie Canal. The section was immediately put into operation, with a trip from Rome to Utica taking about 4 hours. But there was still a ton of work to do, like completing the middle section to Syracuse and on to Lake Erie, and of course, in the other direction, from Utica all the way to the Hudson. By that point, Axeman Jervis was rapidly rising the ranks, and by 1823, he was the resident engineer of a 17-mile section near Amsterdam. And after a series of triumphs, from the Genesee Aqueduct to the Lockport Flight of Five, by 1825, the full Erie Canal was complete, and there were celebrations across the state. Travel time between Albany and Buffalo was significantly reduced, and Clinton's Ditch was a monumental success. Not everyone was pleased, however, especially a bunch of Roman citizens. They were upset that the canal went through the outskirts of Rome at the time, and because it wasn't going through the downtown area, many felt that potential business would be lost. And so they held a sort of mock funeral when the canal was opened, where a black barrel containing water from the old Rome Canal was dumped into the new Erie Canal in protest. Years later, an opportunity arose when the state legislature decided to enlarge the entire Erie Canal. Romans gathered and appointed a spokesperson to advocate for the rerouting of the canal through downtown Rome. They were successful, and in 1844, the change happened, and they were right. Geographically positioned in the center of New York, Rome experienced a surge of economic activity. And looking back, it was in its heyday, along with many other settlements in upstate New York during this time. It was the growing of America. Like having a new superhighway, boats could glide smoothly across the state, cutting travel time and costs dramatically. This meant farmers could sell their crops to more people. Businesses could get supplies faster. And all this success led to numerous canal projects, many of them led by John Jervis himself. He had the Black River Canal connecting Rome to the north, and the Chenango Canal connecting Utica to the south. However, the days of canals were numbered because they began to face competition with the rise of railroads. The Erie Canal would have one last Hail Mary with a second major enlargement project in the early 1900s known as the Barge Canal. The canal section through Rome was filled in, with Erie Boulevard taking its place, and over in Utica, Oriskany Street was another spot filled in. The Barge Canal was completed in 1918, but facing competition from planes, trains, and automobiles, by 1994, commercial traffic had ceased on the Erie Canal. But you can still use it today for recreation, and we should never forget all of those who made it possible. People like John Jervis, who, after a lifetime of engineering work, would donate his home and collection of engineering resources to the city of Rome upon his death. And now it's the Jervis Public Library, where I got information for this video. So his legacy lives on, as does the legacy of the Erie Canal. More than 70% of upstate New Yorkers today live within 25 miles of it. Not too bad for Clinton's ditch. And it all started right here in Rome, New York. Have a good one.